Hello and welcome. I am Cyril Stober. India-Nigeria relations go as far back as 1958 when India established its diplomatic house in Lagos. That was 2 years before Nigeria became an independent sovereign state. Now, ever since, relations between the two developing countries have waxed stronger and warmer. Today, bilateral relations have grown to a volume of trade in the region of some $13.3 billion. Nigeria and India share similar statistics. Now, both have huge populations. India with 1.3 billion people and Nigeria with about 200 million. India is considered the largest democracy in the world, while Nigeria is the largest democracy in Africa. Now, both countries are multi-religious, multi-ethnic, and multilingual. To walk us through this blossoming relation, I have today the High Commissioner of India to Nigeria, His Excellency Abhay Thakur. High Commissioner Thakur had served in various capacities in missions in Moscow, London, Tel Aviv, Ho Chi Minh City, and as High Commissioner to Mauritius. He resumed in Nigeria in January 2019. High Commissioner Thakur, thanks for joining us on One-on-One.
Thank you, and namaste.
Right, okay. Well, you do have concurrent accreditation to Benin Republic, Chad, and ECOWAS, right?
Yes.
All right, and in our opening comments, we said there are certain similarities, if you look at it. Nigeria and India, the huge population, some 1.3 billion people, and well, Nigeria, 200 million. These are huge populations. And let's start from looking at how a country manages large populations as to make it an advantage and not necessarily a drawback.
Well, to begin with, let me first of all thank you for this very, very topical program today that we are having a discussion on India-Nigeria relations. And our relations not only go back to 58, I would want to say that they go back even probably centuries before 58. They predate our respective independences. And in many ways, there are so many striking similarities, but before I come to our large populations, there is something I would like to say in terms of the commonality of approach of both these large countries. Africa is the largest democracy, the largest, most populous country and the largest economy of Africa, and India is the largest democracy in the world. But we have just concluded the 150th anniversary year of Mahatma Gandhi, the father of the Indian nation. And there is something that we always cherish. Mahatma Gandhi left India's shores in the early 19th century, early 20th century, first for England, and then he went to South Africa, and then via Mauritius he came back. But we always like to believe that he went to Africa as a barrister. But when he came back from Africa to India, he came back as a very committed freedom fighter. And I would like to say that probably we gave to Africa a distinguished barrister, but Africa gave us back the great soul, the Mahatma, the father of our nation. Okay. He was so shaped by his experiences in Africa that he was determined to ensure that anti-colonial struggle in India and all over the world indeed should be successful. So this is one of the binding factors that has been uniting both countries for more than a century. Coming to your present question, and a very important one, I think demographic dividend, as we call it, can be a huge advantage if it is channeled and if it is harnessed properly. That is important. Of course, population sizes come with it's both a big opportunity and also a challenge. But this is something that we can overcome the challenges and also convert it into a growth opportunity for the country. In fact, I like to say that probably the current times, the COVID pandemic times, have shown once again, that large populous countries can in fact be more robust, more resilient, stronger in the face of global challenges because they have an inherent strength. My Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, has recently given a slogan, vocal for local, so that we can boost domestic industry, domestic production, domestic services, and this is not exclusive of our international linkages. In fact, in many ways, large countries are capable of not only domestically sustaining challenges, but also leading the world in new ways and methods, and therefore India and Nigeria are probably even better placed than I would say than in the past, as countries which can produce the required food, that can have the necessary industries to service their own large market, and also meet the needs globally. But of course there needs to be a good, motivated, strong ecosystem that goes with it.
Right.
I think we have very much in both our countries. Both our people are very enterprising, very optimistic, forward-looking, young populations. Nigeria is one of the most mobilized countries in the world, if I may use that word. In fact, most recently, just a week ago, India did a major virtual global conference called Artificial Intelligence for All, AI for All. And we had the privilege of the Honorable Minister of ICT, Mr. Isa Ali Pantami, to address it along with the Commissioner in NIDDA and the Special Advisor to the Honorable President. And the one thing that came out of it is that how artificial intelligence can be used by governments for social empowerment.
Okay.
So this is a huge opportunity.
All right.
And we are, I think we have the deck is not unfavorable to countries like India and Nigeria.
All right.
And we need to harness and do well.
Okay, good.
Thank
So a number of these areas we talked about would explore as we continue with this conversation. But I'd like to push it a little further, the question of the large populations. Now, it so happens that within this huge population, there are also numerous ethnic groups, languages. You know, we have described this as multilingual and multi-ethnic. And as you strive to harness this huge population for development, how do you surmount the numbers of languages and ethnic units that you have to deal with? Probably some of them with their own distinct cultural backgrounds as well.
Well, it's a very good question, and in fact, you are in many ways touching upon an important issue that the founding fathers of India grappled with back when we got our independence in 1947. So we had a British ruled India, which was essentially administratively structured for ease of foreign administration. And then we needed to evolve the system to suit India's own diversity, India's own languages and you name it. After a lot of deliberation in the Indian Constituent Assembly, in the Parliament, some very important lessons came out, which were then subsequently enshrined in our system of governance. One was, and essentially all of these centered around one idea, unity in diversity. So we realized that we have to preserve the diversity, and at the same time provide unifying linkages for the entire population. So today in India, we have 28 provinces, states as we call them, 22 official languages, and this is not counting about 400 plus dialects that are there. We have 9 union territories, what we call as federal territories, and we have found this model to be working well for our country, because we have made sure everyone has a say. It's a democratic system, so no one feels left out. Their languages are preserved, and probably many of your audience would be surprised to know that in many provinces of India, official business is conducted, for example, in Maharashtra in Marathi language, in Karnataka in Kannada language, in Bengal in Bengali language, including official circulars, communications to the public, the advisories. So when I say official languages, I mean they are official languages. The administration, the administration of those provinces, including my compatriot domestic civil servants, they correspond and they communicate in the local language of the province, and yet fortunately, like Nigeria, we also have a link language. English serves us well as the link language, and it has had great advantages for India. And having said that, Hindi also is very widely spoken, in fact one of the largest spoken languages in the world. And yet, so we have tried to find the correct mix of respecting diversity, but yet connecting provinces. Again, Bollywood in this has played, I think, an increasingly important role, because yes, our friends in Nigeria, in Africa, and in many parts of the world know and feel the impact of Indian film industry. But what is probably they don't know so much is how much is the impact of the Indian film industry within India, in uniting India, in making sure that there are common dreams, common approaches, common stories to share. So again, media has played a very important role. So I think we have found the right balance in our country, and it served us well.
So India had to look inwards to develop its own mode of protecting the diversity, still maintaining the diversity, but finding a unifying force somewhere to drive the country forward. Right. Let's look at the trade relations. We said it's about something of $13.3 billion. It's a trade between Nigeria and India, and of course this is made up of exports and imports. What's the level of imports?
Well, I would say that India's exports are about between $3 to $3.5 billion. And Nigeria's exports are around $10 billion.
Right.
Of course, a bulk of the Nigerian exports are crude oil and natural gas. Nigeria is, if I'm right, the third or probably the fourth largest supplier of crude oil to India. Nigerian sweet crude is a very good quality crude oil, and we're very happy to have this partnership with Nigeria. Our exports encompass almost everything, I would say, from a number of food items, two-wheelers, machinery is very important.
Yeah, right.
So it's a major trade relationship for both countries, and we are happy to keep supporting it. Let me very quickly add that in fact during the time of the pandemic in the last 6-8 months, yes, there was a concern, how do we sustain these exchanges and this big relationship, but I have been very pleased to see that in fact our businesses, our countries have adapted so quickly. There is so much business interaction going on online between our business chambers. They are doing striking deals, they are constantly talking to each other, training, capacity building, EI tech, you name it. So in fact this has in many ways the last 6-8 months have shown us a new way of doing business together without traveling, without actually booking hotels, and overcoming all distances and restrictions, and making sure that our business linkages remain on even keel, and once again showing that we have robust business cooperation.
Right. You used the term domestic production, and that brings to mind what many countries, especially in these parts, are striving to do, engage in domestic production while not compromising their relations, their exports and all that. And one of the things that I think about is agriculture. You did say that having a huge population can be channeled to an advantage, especially in production, food production. And one of the greatest things Nigeria is striving for is to have food security through increased local production to feed its 200 million plus people. And India with 1.3 billion, of course, has a lot about agriculture. Let's begin to share from the experience of agricultural production in India and how this has reflected in the relations with Nigeria. How do you do this?
Well, I don't think that this is not rocket science, first of all. In fact, in the last, once again, during the pandemic period, while there were a lot of, stories and articles that, our GDP will be affected, and it has been affected to the tune of, about 20% decline. However, what is noteworthy is that agriculture production in the same period has gone up, increased by 3.5%. So this is just one number which is quite striking, that despite challenges, the agriculture production in India has increased. And what does this tell us? That essentially we are talking about small farmers being made viable. That is important. One has to really go down to micro level, microfinance, support, minimum support prices for domestic production, good storage facilities, under the Food Corporation of India. A competitive market for food processing industries, that is very important. And I think the sheer need probably has driven us, because I don't think we have any other way than to produce in the required quantities, and also export wherever possible, but really give a boost. Energy has played a very important role.
Right.
India is today producing 360 gigawatt of electricity, and if I may, I think it's important for Nigeria to increase dramatically its power production. It's currently only 9 gigawatt. So we, the requirement for irrigation, to be able to channel the river waters. You have, big, large rivers which provide irrigation facilities, but they are not being probably harnessed to the extent that it is required. So I think a combination, an ecosystem of support, fertilizers, market, energy, and irrigation is.
I'm bringing this up because you had to deal with a number of issues, famine among them.
Yes.
And of course, when you look at rural agricultural production in the past, you found similar practices where we had mainly the hoes, the traditional hoes and cutlasses, and India had moved at one stage to the plows using animals. Of course, this also was found in some parts. But having to cope with a famine, a period of famine, and then the gradual build-up to mechanization mentioned, and then the key role of power. These are perhaps some of the things that other countries would ask, where did the power to do, the willpower to do this come from?
Well, I think necessity is the mother of invention, and so we really have no choice. Then one has to, if we have to feed our population, and as they say in Nigeria, bring food to every table, then we have to step up, and therefore. I think there has been a very good positive intervention by the government, successive governments over decades, in terms of daily wage minimum guarantees for daily wages working on farms, a number of such programs, including by Prime Minister Modi, both in terms of supporting farming and also ensuring that the market mechanisms work. That is critical, so that after the production happens, the farmer should be able to sell it.
A keyword, competitive markets in food processing, for instance, you use that, and access to credit. How good is that in India?
Well,
for
I
the
think
smallholder farmers.
Of course, it is still there is always room for improvement. But having said that, in many ways the numbers speak for themselves, because we are surplus in all essential food grain production, and the small holding farmers have a certain in fact, we have recently brought in an important amendment in our laws to provide even better market access to the subsistence farmers, and ensuring that not only in many ways the middlemen who would buy at a very low price from the farm and then actually sell at a much upscale prices to the industries, to minimize their roles, because you can't have a situation where any food item or food grain is produced at a very low price, but when it is packaged and sold in the market, it is multiple times more expensive. So this is something which can and should be tackled, because ultimately the consumer is paying what would make the subsistence farmer viable. Now the issue is how do you make sure that the amount that is paid by you and me, by the consumers, an honorable proportion of that reaches the producer, which is the poor farmer, and so this is where we need to work on, and if this portion is tackled well, then agriculture is very sustainable, particularly given our large market sizes. Why not? We are paying much more. I think the food market, when you look at the numbers, you're talking of billions and billions of dollars, but when you're talking of the amount actually going to the farmer, it is probably much lower. So this gap needs to be bridged through legislation and through enforcement measures.
Right. There are some specifics we'd like to refer to, and for instance, there have been regular visits. Officials of both Nigeria and India have visited regularly to take up certain agreed relations. And one thing that comes to mind was in 2015, I think, President Buhari was in India, and that was actually the third India-Africa Forum. So two had been held earlier. What drove India to the summit with Africa, And by the time you had gone up to the third, what are the benefits that have accrued to Africa? And I like us to look at that with particular reference to Nigeria, for instance, that say it's the largest trading partner of India in West Africa.
No, I would say that in many ways the growing proximity of India and Africa is inevitable. Whether the extent to which some stakeholders may or may not get involved, but this is bound to happen for some very basic fundamental reasons. India today has a target of an economy in the next 6-7 years of reaching a $5 trillion economy. Today we are about 2.9 trillion. Africa as a large continent is also into Nigeria is $450 billion US dollars, so if our growth has to come as we both Africa and India desire to the target levels, then of course much of the growth will come domestically. But it is inevitable that much of the growth, a significant part of our growth will come from external engagements. They will have to come from wherever the growth centers are. Lagos, the biggest city in Africa, Mumbai, and we will have to engage because we will drive our growth in a win-win scenario. So whether it is fintech, whether it is IT, whether it is machinery, increasing efficiency of electricity production, the International Solar Alliance, any number of areas, affordable housing solutions, affordable transportation solutions, food processing as we spoke about. We'll constantly do more and more with each other. A lot of Indian companies are now, I'd like to say that Indian and Indian origin investments in Nigeria exceed US dollar 19 billion today, which is a huge number, compared to many other developed countries. We don't have this level of investment, and many of these are producing domestically and also selling domestically within Nigeria. I mean, so whether it is assemblies, transformers, a number of these. There are also, in Nigeria we have an interesting, of course there's the Indian Business Association, which you have, but there is the Indian Pharmaceuticals Manufacturers Association in Nigeria. So you have, and of which there are about 10 companies who are producing pharmaceuticals in Nigeria. So what I'm saying is a lot of growth is coming with our mutual engagement, and this is really what I think has driven India-Africa engagement to come to very quickly. The India-Africa Forum Summit has had a number of concrete outcomes. We had announced nearly 50,000 training programs for Africa in various education, medicine, all number of engagements, and we have reached more than 40,000 training slots have been utilized, thousands of them by Nigeria. We've had large number of projects supported by various kinds of Indian financial schemes, including our lines of credit, including our commercial liberalization for Africa. So I think there is a lot of engagement both in business, training, travel. I would like to say last 6-8 months have seen about 30 direct flights between India and Nigeria, and thousands of people have gone back and forth. So a significant opening up of both India and Africa to each other, particularly India and Nigeria. many benefits have come to both countries.
Well, you mentioned pharmaceuticals, and actually I'm saying that there's actually an association of Indian pharmaceutical companies which is
Manufacturers, yes.
operating in Nigeria and producing drugs locally here. But again, it brings to mind something that almost everyone knows about in terms of pharmaceuticals and medicine. And this is talking about Nigeria-India relations. And one of the first things that will jump out, especially in these times, would be the level of medical tourism to India. Now, obviously, India must have made some investments in health and medicine as to encourage tourism from other countries. So let's speak about the health and health, pharmaceutical, and medicine in India.
In between, yes. Well, thank you. There's very good questions because of late, particularly in the last few years, and once again during the COVID pandemic, India has emerged as what we like to call as the pharmacy of the world. There are Indian companies, institutes which are doing cutting edge research, large volumes of production. But in some ways this brings us back to a very sustainable and attractive ecosystem. So I would say backed by and a drive for affordable medicine. And in fact, not only now, in many ways the Indian company Cipla's role in combating and providing affordable anti-AIDS drug to Africa was a very extremely important contribution. There are tens of thousands of Indian pharmaceutical products, a lot of them having gone out of the way and really sought international certification, GMP, including of course NAFDAC in Nigeria, and a very sustainable education system, including in pharmacy, in medicine, and an ecosystem that has provided the necessary ingredients, including expertise and assembly facilities, ability to also compete and put our points of view for affordable medicine across in fora like the WTO, to ensure that the fruits of development accrue to all, including large populations.
Now, speaking of affordable medicine, how do you achieve that without necessarily compromising efficacy of medicines and standards?
Well, once again, I would say cut the middlemen because a number of innovations and in some ways, if I may, the world has recognized this because almost all innovations have or patents have a certain validity of time period, and after which they are made available for a more affordable production. So yes, of course we need huge investments in innovation and new drugs, but at the same time, if there is sufficient willpower, then once innovated, once these drugs have been produced, they should be made available to the needy population, and it's not difficult. I think we need to ensure that affordable medicine reaches all. It's again a question of government's proactive welfare oriented intervention. which India has managed to adopt. There are also support to competition. So tough anti-monopoly and restrictive trade practices act has helped competitiveness in the Indian industry. So it's not just a few. The benefits must accrue to all. There must be an open environment where people with the right ideas, the right institutes, the right education, the right background will be able to do a startup business and scale it up and actually produce. This is the secret of our pharmaceutical success.
All right. Nigeria and India also have other things in common, like both members of the Commonwealth. Of course, they've played roles in the G77, for instance, and they played roles also in the non-aligned movement. Now, many developing countries, now sometimes people say, look, would India be described as a developing country as well? But many developing countries grapple with issues, and I'm talking about countries that have backgrounds such as Nigeria's and India's. They battle with problems, issues of development, technology, human rights, socio-cultural issues, and one of the biggest issues that tends to tear apart countries are socio-cultural, for instance. And how has India evolved in managing these differences, particularly when it comes to a subject that many Indians are not willing to talk about easily, the caste system?
Well, well, thank you for the question, because it gives me an opportunity to answer it upfront the way I would look at it. The caste system is being, I think, in many ways misrepresented globally. And this is something that I strongly believe that there are social differentiations in all countries. You have hyphenated surnames, you have aristocratic gentry, you have middle class, and you have all kinds of differentiations in every country. In the ancient Indian system, there would have been descriptive descriptions for some of these groups, which then I thought, I seriously believe that in many ways was misrepresented by our colonial powers, and subsequently by many Western schools of thought. So there are distortions. And why I say so? Because India by itself today, if it is reached an economic state of $2.9 trillion economy, food for all, IT, language, of course all this is not compatible with what people tend to call as a social distortion, and therefore one of them is not correct. So there are marriages, there are any number of interreligious, intercommunal, intercaste, so-called intercaste marriages, and there is absolutely nothing that prevents in some ways common approaches and actually mingling of the communities together. So and allow me to just delve on this for a couple of minutes more, because so I would say that the way it is put across or understood needs to be addressed upfront and revisited by those who believe that because there is huge equality. India is the second largest Muslim country in the world after Indonesia. We have all religions. We are the foundation or fountainhead of Buddhism in the world, one of the largest religions globally. Sikhism was founded in India. There are any number of social arrangements and groups which work together, intermingle constantly. So I think a thriving democracy and a sustained economic model speaks for itself.
Well,
so I would say there is no caste system in India.
Right. The reason this was brought up is all countries, as you noted, they have their own socio-cultural idiosyncrasies, as you mentioned, including Nigeria. But do you think that these countries have to tell their own stories from their perspective rather than what the outside world views them as?
Yes, that could have been one area where more probably could have been done and needs to be done. So there I would not differ from you. But India's story, social story, a good part of it remains to be told.
Okay. And of course, a good part of it is still being told by the film industry, Bollywood. Nigeria, we have Nollywood. And well, you can see that Nigeria's Nollywood is described as one of the greatest, fastest growing behind Bollywood. And so these are areas where Nigeria and India also share, a common goal. What's the level of the contribution of Bollywood, for instance, to the Indian GDP?
Well, I wouldn't really know the numbers, but I would say it's significant. It is very, very important. Service sector as a whole, and in particular, media and entertainment industry is a critical, playing a very important role in employment. The sizes of film budgets have increased significantly into multi-million-dollar productions. Good technology, scale, and everything. So, and now Indian film industry is going abroad, shooting a lot in foreign locales. They even say that more than or nearly half of revenues of Indian film industry is coming from two sources. One is the music or the songs market and the market abroad. So of course there is this huge domestic consumption, but also the music and the audience abroad are contributing a lot to the Indian film industry. It's more than economic. I think it's played a very important national role in unifying, and people share the same dreams in many ways.
Yeah, but India has also made giant strides in ICT. Nigeria is looking to benefit from some of these. What are the collaborative efforts in education, for instance, and technology? Of course, you've also made inroads in space technology.
Yes, ICT is very much a happening area and naturally so. The key areas are really once again where Nigeria and India can collaborate are using the fruits of ICT for improvement, for social empowerment, for governance and so on. I think that is where India has, I would like to highlight India's achievements through a number of, whether it is e-judiciary, e-courts, e-licenses, ID cards, unique ID, authority of India, all manners of governance, taking it to the remotest corners of India, with the help of a very strong connectivity network, has been most important, in ensuring that the fruits of development reach all. And this is where Nigeria and India as countries are collaborating, and in particularly in the areas of training and capacity building.
Right.
And of course, the private sector is doing a lot together, in terms of specific solutions. Lagos is the startup hub, if I may, of Africa, and there are many collaborations in fintech. I mentioned it earlier. There are a number of solutions where we are working together, including in many of the banking softwares, and financial services.
Well, at governmental level, what support in education, for instance, because we keep coming back to that, in education particularly?
Well, there was and education more recently in the last few years has seen increasing attractiveness of Indian educational institutions, partly also the opportunities and our own institutions have begun to go out a little more, and are offering more opportunities for foreign students because their capacities are now getting augmented. So we have seen a welcome increase in the Nigerian students choosing India as an education destination. The last count was several thousand, and in all fields, where engineering, pharmacy, law, and all areas of science, commerce as well. So there has been an increased interest in India because of I think the unique combination we can probably bring compared to most other education destinations is affordability and quality. So this is something that is very much the next area. We are also launched what we like to call the tele-education and telemedicine initiative of India, recently launched under the E-Vidya Bharati and E-Arogya Bharati program of Government of India, and so far 16 African countries have joined. Nigeria has also got the offer, and we are in discussions with Nigeria. So really about 15,000 education and several thousand telemedicine slots are also being provided to Africa.
Right. One key thing you mentioned a number of times has to do with the power, energy, and I'm looking now at renewable energy and what collaboration as Nigeria strives to build its power base and improve on energy.
Well, it's a very important area of potential collaboration. One thing I'd like to point out is that in solar energy, and in India we have what we call the power exchange, which is the e-auction of power producers. All of them come on a common exchange, and then they in real-time basis power is bought and sold between large producers and large consumers. And solar energy, solar power has come to be made available at prices which are in many places now lower than conventional thermal energy, and of course lower than other forms. So with scale and with our blessed locations in terms of solar power, it's a very, very affordable solution. Of course, the way to go is in the absence of large transmission networks, mini grids are the area where we are working on. Under the International Solar Alliance, there are a number of projects with the Ministry of Power of Nigeria that we have discussed, particularly, as I said, mini grids and solar power. But one thing I would again like to emphasize that solar power is today competing and is probably now cheaper than other forms of conventional energy in India, and this is easily achievable. We are, as we speak, I think later or next week we will have the General Assembly of the International Solar Alliance will be held, and this has got so much potential that both India and Nigeria can work together even more.
Okay, so you look forward to greater relationships in these fields here. All right.
Thank you.
Excellency Abhay Thakur, High Commissioner of India to Nigeria, it's been interesting talking to you. Thank you for coming on One on One.
Thank you so much, and once again, namaste.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
See you.
Thank you.
And that's our program today. We thank you for watching. Next week we'll be back with One on One. I am Cyril Stober. Stay safe.